Good morning, everyone, and thank you for dropping in. In this morning's webinar, I'm going to share about the wearable industry that has rapidly exploded in growth since 2015. Now, let me share the deck with you right now. So I'm Zentrix and from Zia Asia. Those in the watch industry will be quite familiar with my work in retail distribution and branding across the Southeast Asia region. Below is one of the work that I've done in 2018, whereby I am helping Citizen as a consultant to celebrate their 100-year anniversary in Malaysia. Please enjoy this short clip. So Zia Asia focus on three pillars in our business. We look at big data processing via through blockchain, e-commerce execution with Monster Mall and Vigran Group, and also the distribution of smart wearables like Polar and Mobri Group. So for those that have not heard about Polar, I would like to share with you a video later. But predominantly, we are actually looking after the Southeast Asia region. So let me just share this video with you for those that have not heard about Polar or they already know about Polar. This is just to share with you. So as you can see, Polar focus on training revolving around the heart rate. They have pioneered and set the gold standard around the world for its accuracy in heartbeat measurement. The one that you saw is the latest product they have created, and that is actually preferred by fitness professionals around the world. Now, let us come to today's topic, wearable technology. Now, this topic will approximately take 50 minutes and focus on updating the academics, corporates, and government officials about the facts behind the rapid growth in tech wearables around the world. By the end of this webinar, you will likely walk away with a quick understanding of the smart wearables, even if you're not from this sector. Now, the quick dive into the world of wearables has four key segments. What is wearable tech? Where it empowers you, which we will cover so that it can empower you to understand the history over the last 100 years. The big numbers today, which cover the sales in terms of the volume, the units sold over the last 6 years. What is the future for wearable? It's basically to cover using the Goodell's hype cycle to dive deeper along the trends over the next 5 years. And lastly, we look at the two angles from the consumer and the corporate market for wearable tech. And of course, we will also briefly cover Fitbit. Now, all this will actually empower you in this coming wave of growth in the coming decade. To sum up, these two, they are in blue, are generally for the academics. While the other two, which is in green, are actually for the corporates. So what is wearable tech? Is it a watch? Is it a band? Or is it your latest smartphone? Now, in this video, you will have your answer in 60 seconds.
Let's look at wearable tech in 60 seconds. Wearable tech is technology we wear on our bodies and that is able to collect, transmit, and process data. The trend started with fitness trackers. Today, there's a huge array of wearable tech, from smartwatches to smart jewelry to fertility trackers to even connected running shoes and smart clothes. Wearable tech is not just there for our convenience and our entertainment, but it can also support our health. Wearable tech can now track our activity levels, our heart rate, our blood oxygen levels, and many other health factors. As devices such as computer chips and sensors are getting smaller and smaller, we will simply see an explosion of most things we wear becoming intelligent. Let's look at.
So, of course, some techies will argue otherwise, that it need not be worn on our body, but also can be carried in our clothes. Whatever is the case, wearable tech is big data machines whereby you collect, you transmit, and you process data. I think there's a universal agreement that wearable tech needs to have all this CTP process involved. Now, in this video, we look at Claude Shannon. Now, who is he? Have a look.
Who's Claude Shannon?
Who's Claude Shannon?
Claude Shannon? You're asking me this question?
We live in the information age, and Claude Shannon is the father of the information age.
In the last couple of years, we've generated more information than the sum of all of human history.
The fact that you can contact an Uber, place a phone call, text a friend, and then check your email, all of those things you owe to Claude Shannon and his work.
He's at the same level as Newton or Einstein.
Why don't people know about him? His impact is bigger than all of the household names.
To measure information, you have to look at it without meaning. Content is irrelevant. That upset a lot of people. A coin toss is the simplest form of information. Heads or tails, a 1 or a 0, a binary choice. A bit.
And that was the revolution.
Back in the 1910s and 20s, he had what we would probably call now a free-range child, rigging up a barbed wire telegraph, learning wigwag signaling, sending Morse code flags.
Shannon lays this idea that machines could be made to think. He himself invents devices that mimic a brain. There's the mouse that can navigate a maze, the computer that can play a chess game.
My dad tried to fool with everything a little bit and see if he could make it more fun. He knew how to juggle, and he taught me how to juggle.
He was like an artist. He didn't sound like a scientist, not at all.
Who makes a flaming trumpet? A rocket-powered frisbee.
When Shannon's paper came out, it was like a bombshell, like Newton coming out with the laws of motion.
For a long time, people didn't really understand what this was all about.
Engineers thought it was so far removed from anything they could build, they just basically thought it was science fiction.
It took decades for people to find those codes that Shannon promised existed.
Everything that Shannon predicted back in 1948 came true.
Learning things, discovering things. He didn't lose that childlike curiosity and delight.
Practical or playful. He was into understanding.
What would the world look like if Claude Shannon hadn't done what he did?
So in short, he's the father of information theory, and he played a very, very important role in wearable tech.
Who's Claude?
So this is we shall run through the last, I would say, that 100 years of wearable tech. Now, the first form of wearable tech, but non-movable one, actually started 100 years ago. It collect data, it transmit and process it. Now, this is the polygraph in 1921. And you can see that that was actually the first wearable tech, because you had to wear on it and then they collect data of you and it measure your skin temperature and things like that. So that was the first form, but it was not movable. Now, the second one was very interesting. It was actually came out in 1950, and it was actually, executed by government agency, especially like MI6 or CIA. And the reason why for the spies to wear the huge trench coat, which we associate them with, is because of the camera that you can see over there is very, very big. So that's the only way that you can hide it, because you have to shoot it using the button camera. And then this is the world's first wearable computer. Now, this one came out in 1961. And the main duty of this wearable computer is basically to help you to beat the roulette. And it was invented none other by Claude Shannon and Edward Toke. Now, this is the part whereby it's very interesting, because it is the first wearable that has a circuit board. And that really changes a lot of things after that. And that was in 1961. That was 40 years ago. Now, the fourth form of wearable tech came out in 1978, and it was bipolar and used in heart, I would say, training and sports. It was the first device that collect heart data from a human being. This set off the electrical wearable in the 1980s. Now, I am going to come to, the 1980s, but before that, in this video, you will see the summary of the achievement that 1980s has brought over the last 10 years.
Let me tell you about heart rate training. I will start at the beginning. In 1977, we invented heart rate monitoring to help people be fitter, faster. Before then, people thought the best way to get fitter was to train as hard as they possibly could. But in fact, the very best way to reach your goal, whatever it is to train smart. You do this by listening to your heart, so you know when to go fast and when to go slow. And that's why people choose Polar. We not only listen to their hearts with great accuracy, but we tell them what the information means for their body. Think of your Polar training computer like a coach on your wrist, monitoring your performance, storing vital feedback, and interpreting the information to guide you onwards. Many people think heart rate training is just for performance athletes, but actually, Polar make heart rate training simple for everyone who exercises for a reason. You just need to choose the right type of training computer to guide you, and you'll get to your goal more quickly, because it will tell you the right intensity at which to train, so you never waste any time. You see, your heart is amazing. When you make it work at different intensities, different things happen. If you work your heart at 50 to 60% of its capacity, you improve your overall health and help your body to recover. At 60 to 70%, you burn fat and improve endurance, and so on. If you push your heart to the limit, and you should only do this for short bursts, you develop your maximum performance and speed. Knowing how hard to push your heart and for how long takes the guesswork out of your hard work, so you'll never over or undertrain again. And knowing these things is what Polar does, is what makes it special. Because we don't just pass on information, we interpret that information to guide you forwards. Try it.
So by the end of it, the wearable tech already have the ability to extract heartbeat information, and by the end of the 1980s, which also at the same time, Polar is the father of heartbeat training and tracking.
Let me tell you.
So let us journey to 1980s right now. So immediately after Polar did and invented that tracking device in 1978, so what happened is someone came out with something innovative as well in 1980. So this is the first wearable computer eyewear in 1980. It's developed by Steve Mann, more famously known as father of digital eyewear. And it was like an early form of Google Glass. Then in 1982, Polar further advanced with the world's first wireless monitor, which you can actually now monitor your heartbeat on your wrist without any wires. Now, in 1984, 2 years later, Seiko came out with the world's first wearable wrist computer. Now, what's interesting about this is it has a special docking station that allows the data to be printed. And this is in 1987. This is the world's first wearable electronic hearing device, which was developed by Nicolette Digital. And what is interesting is that that was actually you can consider that as your first hearables. So in the 1980s, if you really follow until right now, you already have the grandfather of smart glass, the grandfather of heart wearable, the grandfather of the smartwatch, the grandfather of the hearables, all out in 1980s. Now you look at it, the 1980s was about extracting data. All this that is on the screen right now has one thing in common. It's about extracting data, transmitting the data, and processing the data. Now let's journey right now to the 1990s. Again, this is to show you by the end of the decade in 1990s what actually really sum up. Sum up the whole decade of technology advancements. So enjoy this enjoy this clip.
The marathoners, the around-the-blockers, the elite, the local heroes, the social butterflies, the fast, the slow, and everyone in between. Forerunner for runners from Garmin.
So by the end of this 1990s, of course, the wearable tech has progressed to the stage whereby it integrates the ability of GPS, global positioning system. And even though Casio is actually the father of this, but Garmin has totally taken it to the next level. So now let's look at the 1990s. In the early part of 1992, the first immersive AR was actually developed, and it was actually for the US Air Force. And AR, augmented reality or virtual reality, was no longer a friction. Then in 1994, the world's so-called first smartwatch, whereby they are able to connect to the computer, was launched, and that was actually developed by Timex and Microsoft. The reason that the watch can link up to the computer is by reading the light emitted from the computer itself. So then again, by 1998, after the internet was given to everybody or was born, 1998 saw that the world's first wearable that actually have a video phone, and it was actually developed by Steve Mann. who cement his place, and now he is known as the father of wearable computer. And also at the same time, in case you didn't really know actually what he does, is that right now, all the mobile phones that we're using, right? The HDR mode, he is the patent owner of that were issued in 2 billion mobile phones right now. Then, of course, in 1999, Casio shocked the world when he debuted the first wearable watch with the GPS function. And this was possible because the US President Bill Clinton ordered the military to stop scrambling the satellite and actually allow it to be used in civilian. Now, this makes the GPS system to be 10 times more accurate than before. Now, with GPS, we come to the 2000s. And by the end of this period, a little unknown company was born, and it became a giant that is also become a game changer in early 2010. Now, let us look at their company.
Fitbit was founded in 2007 by partners James Park and Eric Friedman when they saw the potential in using sensors in wearable devices. This is a time when wearables wasn't even a category. With great ideas and no experience in manufacturing, they went to TechCrunch in 2008 and got over 2,000 pre-orders in one day. They were ecstatic but in big trouble because they didn't have the infrastructure. For 3 months, they spent time in Asia trying to figure out this manufacturing process, and almost 7 times their company nearly died. Nevertheless, they managed to figure it out, and finally in 2009, Fitbit officially launched with 5,000 orders direct to consumers and 20,000 orders on the back burner. In a market dominated by clunky pedometers and excessively complicated and manly fitness trackers, Fitbit appealed to a whole new group of people who wanted to track their well-being. Simple and cheerful, the initial Fitbit clip showed your track steps, and as you hit your milestones, a little flower grew. The audience loved this reward system, and soon enough, Fitbit was at the pinnacle of the wearables market. Fitbit grew as they took advantage of unique social components, such as users being able to share badges with each other and compete with each other. They also introduced new models and hit the jackpot with their smartwatch.
So by the end of this, what Fitbit has done is he introduced gamified into the wearables. In a certain way, it provides entertainment. And wearables at that point of time before Fitbit doesn't really communicate with the wearers, and in short, very boring.
Fitbit was founded.
So now as we cross over in the 2000s era, what was born was actually the world's first wearable Bluetooth device. Now, this was very important because it allowed the connectivity to be established ever since it was invented. So it was actually, you can consider it as a pioneer wireless M2M's language. Now, in 2001, the famous iPod was born. Now, other than making Apple rich, it has given 2 things to the Wearable Tech. Number 1, the compact storage of data. And number 2, entertainment in Wearable Tech. So in 2005, this is a moment whereby Polar and Adidas introduced the world's first combined wearable tech, which integrates the smart shirt, the smart shoe, and the smart watch itself to process heart rate, speed, and distance. Now, this was very important because it opened up the endless possibility of integrating all the wearable tech into one singular device. So in 2009, Fitbit was born. Other than, well, it was started more of like counting steps. But then again, the higher functions like tracking calories and sleep, and in the later part, gamification, it really set the floor right for wearable tech. Now, finally, we come to the last decade, 2010 to 2019. Now, before this time, wearable is still basically operating in its own imaginative form. And by the end of it, this is what a typical wearable is capable to do.
Imagine a future where one day machine learning will give you the power to track your sleep. Imagine.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes? Can I help you?
Yeah, this already does that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, now you do.
Okay, let's try this again. It's all right, I'll start again. Imagine one day a tiny device with an optical sensor will send you an alert if your heart rate is too low. Yes? What? It already does that. What? Oh, okay. Well, how about we'll send you an alert if your heart rate is too high?
It already does that!
All right, let's try something new. We'll send you an alert if you're someplace that's too loud.
I just received one of those alerts.
Really? Well, you should probably find a quieter place, sir.
You should probably mind your own business.
Okay, imagine one day in the future.
Hold on.
No, let me finish.
1 second.
You'll be able to take an ECG.
It already does that.
It already does that.
I heard that.
Good. What about continuously track your elevation? Does it do that?
Does that.
Right, got it.
Does that.
Thank you.
Does that.
Yep, heard it the first time. Encourages you to stay fit.
Does that.
Okay, I get it. You're fit. I don't know. Will it automatically call 911 if a bear chases you off a cliff and you take a hard fall? Huh?
Yeah, already does that.
Seriously?
Yeah, seriously.
You've got to be kidding me. Okay. I got it. Let's go from the top. Imagine a day, a future. Imagine a future. One day, tiny device, blah, 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 that uses red and infrared light to measure your blood oxygen level. Yes? What? No. Don't you dare say it. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
So Apple did not just create a tech wearable. It has literally opened up the doors of what a true wearable can be. Everything that happened during this decade is faster than any other known decade in the last 100 years. Or some might say that it started since 1961 or 40 years. But if you really look at it, whatever they have done in this decade is enormous.
Imagine a future.
So again, now let's look at how it all happens. Now, this is also the time between 2010 to 2019. It was a period whereby IoT became the buzzword on everybody, right? The Internet of Things. So in 2013, this is the first commercial hearable, okay, which was actually launched with the possibility of basically able to monitor heart rate as well. Now, in 2017, after the introduction of Apple iWatch in 2015-16, the world was literally, the imagination of the world was literally lit up. In 2017, Motif was actually born, and it was actually the first wearable ring in the world. Then it came with, of course, 2018, Apple really upped the stake by moving from by moving from lifestyle to medical. When it came out with the first smart wearable that has the ability to conduct ECG and was actually being approved by FDA itself. Next, we have 2019. Now, this is also something very unique because why? It's the world's first wearable pain relief tech. Okay, and I would say that this is also not only that it works, it was also approved by FDA as well. Now, at this stage, wearables are no longer just about taking data, but tell you where you are, like GPS, or entertain you. It is right now becoming part of a solution provider, for example, like pain relief. So think about it. Now that IoT buzzword pretty much sums up the last decade, then what about the coming decade from 2021 to 2030, where it will be a 5G decade? How will wearables be capable to perform, especially on the solution part? So we are here right now looking at the big numbers. Now, we know that basically wearable has, right now, after going through the different decades, You already have the understanding that how the wearable has progressed since the first polygram was invented, or since the first movable wearable tech, like the one that beat the Rolex. Now we dive deeper into the numbers. Now, again, before that, please enjoy a short video of the next big thing. It's rumored that this was supposed to come out either this year or next year, but do take note, this is not the official video, but done by someone really passionate about Apple products. So imagine this, you have the eyeglass, and it's rumored between now or next year, where approximately 1,000 engineers are right now working behind the scene to launch this, which they claim that will be bigger than iWatch. We do not know, but this is just a teaser of the things to come in tech wearables. So now we go into the numbers. Now, what do the numbers tell us? Now, if you look at the numbers, you will realize that there seemed to be like a zero COVID-19 effect on this sector. From 19.6 million units shipped in 2014, it has grown to 444.7 million units shipped. That is how fast it has grown. And this sector is accelerated by the iWatch in 2016, followed by the part whereby they have the ECG integrated in 2018. And of course, the COVID-19 was actually a big plus for the tech wearables. Now, what is also observed in this from the unit perspective is that the wearables are also the stunning category, because none of the research houses have forecast such a rapid growth, and it becomes the fastest category today. Now, from the sales side, if you really look at it right now in front of you, now 2020, of course, have witnessed wearable tech beating easily earlier estimates of 51 billion by 19 billion to achieve 69 billion in terms of sales. It is one sector that had really defied the whole entire COVID and lockdown. However, do take note that 1/3 of the units shipped are all from Apple. The reason why it can't hit 80 billion, well, is because that not lack of supply, but that's not lack of demand, but because of the supply due to that the factories are closed. Now we look into the brand perspective. Now, the top 5 brands take a market share of easily 67.1%, with everybody else taking up the remaining. However, in India, a little company, which is now not little, called Boat, is actually growing up very fast. But however, 90% of their products are sold in India, but in Q4 2020, they are climbing into the top 5. Now, we look at the adoption perspective right now. There are 2 things observed in this adoption curve. First of all, wearables are the fastest category to be adopted to hit 20% in only 5.5 years. And this could be also attributed to the shift from just a wearable product into a medical product. Now, from the big numbers, when we look at units sold, volume sold, market share, adoption, there is no denial that this is a very exciting category in the coming decade. Now, let us try to explore the future of wearables in the coming 5G. Again, before that, let me just share with you what the future beholds in this video.
Well, for more on wearable tech and what it means for the fight against COVID-19, let's bring in researcher Mintu Trakia. He is director of Stanford Center for Digital Health and the newly formed Heart Health Technology Center, funded by the American Heart Association. Thank you for joining me.
Rochelle, thanks. Great to be here.
So in their efforts to contain the spread of the pandemic, we've seen a lot of these governments around the world rolling out wearable technology to try and assist in fighting the virus. So in your view, what regions or countries are the early adopters and how are their launching efforts going?
Yeah, well, it's happening in a couple of ways. It's really being used in two use cases. One, as you mentioned, is public health surveillance. And so this is contact tracing, disease surveillance, tracking clusters, and even ensuring adherence to either quarantining or social distancing with some of the technologies that you have on these fitness bands, in some cases custom bands as well. Now, we're seeing this in a number of countries. Singapore gained early popularity with their Trace Together app, and what this did is it leveraged Bluetooth technologies to identify who is near you, or at least who is near your cell phone. But since then, we've seen a number of implementations across the world, including Norway, Kuwait, Bulgaria, South Korea, and many others.
Now, since this isn't something that a lot of these devices were originally designed for, can you talk about the early obstacles as well as the successes?
Well, it's interesting because this is a situation where the technology came ahead.
So, COVID has indirectly also accelerated the tech wearable or wearable tech. And right now we dive deep in.
Well, for more on
so it's expected to reach 100 billion by 2023 because from the traction of growth, it is possible. Now, these are the players that going to be the main players in the coming decade. You can see Apple, Fitbit, Garmin, Misfit, Beatings from France, Polar, POSON, Samsung, etc., etc., and Xiaomi, of course. So you can look at the category by the price that they specialize in and the things that they actually have right now. For 2021, Gartner actually forecasted $81.5 billion. Followed by that, if you start to see this, you start to see that most probably wearable medical device will be the main drivers. Now, let us go into the Gartner hype cycle. What is it? What is this whole thing about? Right? So it is basically a cycle used to separate hype versus reality. Now, any tech that actually came out when it came out like through a trigger, you will always raise a very peak expectations and everybody just write how good it is. Now, any tech in this slope of entitlement or onwards are good signs that the tech has become commercial viable. So normally in the peak of inflated expectation, you will see all the videos coming out saying how great the product is. And when you buy it, most of the time, you will disappoint. So what this means? This means that this will allow you to actually track how commercial viable that particular segment is doing. Now, this is what happens in 2015, where the wearables are in. It was considered at the peak of inflated expectation. You can definitely see a lot of wearables in Kickstarters, Indiegogo, because the money they put in and the benefits that they promise. But however, most of them normally fall short of the promise. Now, as you can see right now, most wearables are normally in the first generation form. If you look back at the chart in 2015, and Apple, even the Apple first two generations did not really do very well. It is only until that Apple Series 3 came about, that's where it stabilized. And by then, it is already passing through the troughs of disillusion. But this is a good estimate of what is viable. So before the COVID-19 or 2018, this is where the hearables are. And this is where the wristwatch or the smartwatch is. And this is where the bands are. That was already in 2018. Now let's look at this updated chart as of August 2018. Now you can see that on the rise here, the basic smart ring, smart footwear was actually, people are talking about it. People are saying a lot of fantastic things about it, what you can do and all this. Now, at the peak of August 2018, the one that really you're talking about in the market was, speed-based translator, smart garments like clothes, smart clothing. It was actually at the peak. A lot of things came out on that in just easily 2 or 3 years ago. Then at the same time, slightly in the trough, which is not so bad. That means it's getting the expectations, the things are coming, are the earbuds, the smartwatches. And then you have like passing that stage and stabilizing with more than 10% of the market adopting the tech. You have like the wristbands, the personal tracker, the sports watches, etc., etc., etc. Now, in 2020 December, these are the very rough estimation of the three categories. Number one, this is the earbuds, which is, you can see how fast it came. And then you have the wristwear, the smartwatch, and you have the bands, which achieve the highest, more than 25% adopted it. So normally at the part here is already minimum 25%, whereby the general population actually adopts that wearable. Now, having said this, now let's look at the overview of applications. Now, there are all in total 8 key sectors on wearable based on the Bichan research, which I found it very interesting. Now, however, I felt that there's only 4 key sectors that are likely to be punting ahead. For example, security, medical, wellness, and sports. Now, it's also predicted the hearable and smartwatch shall really move ahead, while the bands will likely drop to a very disappointing 2.4% from a high of like 2020, 17.1%, and you start to crawl downwards to 2.4%. Now, at the same time, we could also start to see that the corporates adopting the wearable tech in the next 5 years, especially after COVID, the bosses, top management saw the users of it themselves during the lockdown. Of course, while the bands share continues to slide down to 2.4%, there's a very high possibility that you will be adopted by the corporate side as the cost becomes very manageable. And in terms of the volume, I believe that could likely take place. Now we are really moving on to the strategic perspective on wearable tech. Now in this section, we will examine using the Zen color chart to peek into the wearable industry. Again, before this, let me show you a video on textile tech, which aims to integrate itself with health.
I'm Dan Herman, Vice President of Strategy for Mind Inc. We put technology into textile to create a platform for remote health monitoring and the consumerization of healthcare. Textile computing refers to the integration of technology, notably electrodes and biometric sensors, into everyday fabrics or textiles. We put these sensors into everyday products, a t-shirt, your underwear, and thanks to the technology that's embedded in it, we can read what's going on in your body. If we can enable all these textile products with technology that reads what's going on in your body, we can essentially create a totally ubiquitous and nearly invisible platform for the consumerization of healthcare. There are 3 really exciting potential applications for textile computing in healthcare. The first application is for heart health. Imagine a shirt or underwear that could read what's going on in your heart, and thanks to a connection to the cloud, you could share that with your doctor, and she or he could let you know whether you need to come in proactively before something happens. The second application is for medication detection. In the future of healthcare, a lot of pills will be digital, but you need a receptor, you need a medium to pick up that pill. That same underwear that you use for heart health can actually be used to detect whether you've taken the medication you've been prescribed correctly, and again, transmit that to your doctor or share it with a family member to make sure you're on the right path to rehabilitation. The third example is for women's health, where again, using that same smart clothing and the embedded sensors, we can track everything from a woman and her fetus's ECG and whether they need to go to the hospital proactively. We can track a woman's ovulation calendar by tracking changes in respiration, heart rate, and temperature. And in the future, textile computing will even allow us to track things such as the development of breast cancer. The beauty of textile computing is that we all wear clothes anyways. Imagine waking up in the morning, putting on your clothes, and having an extended healthcare team as a result. Put these potential applications together, and you have what we believe is a pretty phenomenal opportunity to transform healthcare by giving consumers and individuals essentially a doctor at their side who can help them understand what's going on in their bodies and help them proactively seek care.
So, if you understand the earlier hype chart which I've explained, you can, and your answer is that this textile tech fall into at the peak stage. You have fully understand that hype chart and its users. Now, what is interesting in this strategic perspective is that basically from whether you are academic, corporate, or from the governments, in terms of the numbers, well, it's very clear-cut that the wearables will be one of the fastest growing areas since mobile phone was invented. APAC will be the next big area, and Xiaomi will continue to be dominating this APAC market due to its pricing. Now, development path, they are basically boiled down to two key segments, which is number one, the tech wearables or wearables tech can position itself constantly as a consumer device. Now, everything you wear, you saw down there, and you think that you can wear is a possibility that could happen. But at the moment in 2020, there are only three categories that seems to be powering ahead or already proven itself with the adoption rate of more than 20%. Number one was the hearable. Number two, it was the smartwatch. And number three, the smart bracelet or the bands. Now, on the other side of where the development path could go for wearable tech is as corporate devices. Now, when it comes to corporate devices, this is where, again, all the categories you saw there, it seems to be pivoting towards the medical side. Now, it's not wrong because that's the first sector that COVID has actually allowed most of us or allowed most of the even government to look at it to see whether it's a viable solution to the problem. Now, in this sector, let's just say after COVID, what is interesting is that the telehealth, the remote patient monitoring will likely be the one that will stand out. Why? Because we have an aging population, and this will actually reduce a lot of waiting time and improve the medical efficiency inside the hospitals. So now let's come up to this using these Zen charts to execute the understanding of the wearable industry. Now, this is a very simplified attempt to ensure everybody understands at the end of it. So, of course, as if you follow my previous presentation, the green zone is where everybody wants to go. The red zone is everybody wants to avoid. Now, let's start off with the red zone. Now, if you position yourself as a basic wearable and market yourself, in a way like one, you're likely to see weak sales, like those wearables found in Alibaba, Taobao, whereby you saw this unbranded wearables that tell you they can count steps and all this, but actually they can't. So it's actually they promise you some new tech that doesn't exist or unproven. Most probably it's low growth, low sales. You most probably use it and you just put it aside. So the main angle for here will be the cost of production, and all is basically a very new, unproven idea. Next, we have if you position yourself as a consumer wearable, now you were equipped with proven tech, as you know, of course the demand is looking at that. And of course, if you are not careful or fail to innovate, you're likely to go back to the red zone. But if you are good in what you do, you could expand into the orange zone or the green zone. Now, as for the orange zone, is what I would call it as niche wearable. Now, it is where the latest technology is integrated with IoT, or in 5G, if the era comes. Nobody is actually doing what you are doing. You have low sales because due to multiple factors, lack of funds and things like that. But then again, you are doing something nobody is doing. Okay, it's a new tech that the market might need. It's something really new, and not because you just duplicate and copy like those in red zone as a basic wearable. You're looking at something really, really exciting, somebody that have never touched before. For example, you'll be like the Oura ring, the Motif ring, which is very new. It's a very niche wearable, which at the same time, it has the possibility of going to the consumer wearable, or it can also go back to the green zone. So lastly, the green zone, we're talking about industrial wearable. Now, in industrial wearable, this is likely to be the billion-dollar market, which tech companies will tell you that this is where likely they want to go, because it's not affected by the consumer sales demand. It's actually dependent more of the corporate usage. Now, once it goes into there, you can even license your tech to consumer wearables if the market is good, to focus on the continuous R&D for your wearable. Now, an example will be like for example, for Motif, because of what they have done, they have been bought over by a company that requires them to take away all the consumer products off the market shelf. Now, this is something that they wanted because they recognize the technology in terms of identifying KYC. So when you wear a ring, you're able to identify this is the personal identification of this guy. So it comes from a niche wearable, and before it hit the consumer wearable, it got absorbed into as an industrial wearable. So this so-called Zen color chart allows you to look at the positioning of the wearable. Now, Apple, in a certain way, will constantly rotating between the yellow and the orange zone to keep itself ahead. So when it came out, the latest product, but then it will move back into the consumer wearable. So this is actually where Apple will likely to be. Now, let us look at Fitbit as an example. So Fitbit operates in the orange zone as a niche wearable when it first started. Nobody is doing that, right? Just now I already shared. Now, without any competitor, it quickly went into the consumer wearable, which is the yellow zone. So they moved from orange to yellow. Then what happens is Apple and Xiaomi comes in. So, and it still remained in the yellow zone. Now, in less than 4 years, the market share drops to only 11%. Now, by 2020, Fitbit is actually dropped out of the top 5% ranking, and right now trending towards the red zone. Expected as what I shared earlier on in 2024, Fitbit will most probably be non-existent if we still stick with only the band without any breakthrough in technology. So what have I shared so far is basically something that I want everybody to take something back home. And even though right now is the final part of the webinar, if you feel that you really understand the wearable market one way or another, like before you attended this webinar, your understanding could be like zero. Right now, you walk away with at least 60-70% understanding how it came about and things like that. I would say that the objective have literally been completed. Now, as an individual that comes from the watch industry, which is like, is like a father of wearables or a grandfather of wearables. I'm actually quite amazed by the pace of this industry, especially when Apple overtake the entire output of the Swiss industry last year in terms of sales units. Now, before I continue further, let me share with you an unknown side of Polar which many people didn't know.
One, training tempo is the key to this workout. 3, 2. So for the last 60 seconds, we're going for our maximum. Game on! 4, 3, 2, high! 10 seconds. Close to the max heart rate. Stop. Now as fast as you can. Point for load. 2, 1. Rest. Yay! Hard work.
Keep it a little bit at the top. Don't take it easy. Now you have some energy left.
So, key thing is that now I want you to imagine if this is used in military training or medical needs. Now, if you remember the Zen chart just now that I shared, what color zone do you think that it will move into if either one of these adopted Polar? Now, if your answer is that you move from the yellow to the green zone, then you already understand that how the wearable could have pivot accordingly. Now, again, to conclude, what is wearable tech? Now, I have already covered the 4 areas that are for academics and for the corporates. We also look at the family tree of wearables and the integration of the tech wearables that is set possible because of what happened in 2005, 15 years ago when Polar and Adidas start to cooperate. Now, more and similar ways will happen in the coming decade. That one is for sure. And if you right now look at the from Malaysia side, I would say that Malaysia agencies such as MIDAC, MCMC, MOSTI, I believe that they have put in great efforts, because when I do my research and I do this webinar, it's very interesting that from the deck that they have prepared, which I actually went through, they have constantly accelerate the digital blueprint, especially during the heights of COVID last year. Now, it's not easy because everybody, because of the MCO and the constraints, but they have together, they put out a wonderful deck. And if really you go through, you realize that many of these initiatives put in place show and signal that the government already pick up that wearable tech is a growing industry. It's something they have taken note, and hopefully this webinar itself can further amplify the great work and the good efforts put in by the teams in MIDAC MCMC. So as you can see over there that these are some of the things that is from their research, and I already put it together. Now we move to the last part, which I really felt, or the last slide of today's webinar. Now this is the recommendations that I have from my personal perspective for the academics and corporates and even government side to take away for the next coming 5 years. Manufacturing. I believe very few people know this. The current gold standard heartbeat device, the H9 and the H10 from Polar, is actually made in Malaysia, in Penang. Now, what is so great about this thing? you might not know because you're not from the wearable industry, but all I can say is that the chip used to measure the heart rate is considered a gold standard. I repeat, a gold standard. Okay, it will be good if more visits to such such factories or similar factories from other leading wearable manufacturers could be made, because this will help Malaysia to position as a wearable hub. So that is starting with the M. Now, integration of the sectors. Now, while we have multiple academies in Malaysia, there is a clear lack of wearable academy right now, which basically integrates and move everybody towards this common direction. And this could actually have positive spillover to other tech initiatives practiced by the Malaysian government. Third, and so I would say that the national adoption drive is very important, because it helps to create a more efficient process of the M2M data processing. Now, M2M, what it means is machine to machine, right? So you collected the data and you transmitted to another machine to do all the data analyzing. So one of the key areas that could really benefit is the digital healthcare in Malaysia, which was already identified under MCMC. So I felt that in the middle of COVID, or in the process that vaccination is taking place, this could be a really good national adoption drive to onboard everybody using tech wearable, so that this would help to accelerate the entire onboarding process. So it has to have a national adoption to onboard all the data in order to have very meaningful development, which comes under the D. Now, in terms of the My Digital announced by the government just over this year, now Malaysia might not able to compete right now with China and Vietnam when it comes to the creation and the manufacturing of tech wearables, but it can definitely compete as a development hub on third-party apps, which can be in line with My Digital 2021 initiative set by MOSTI as well. So in conclusion, let us adopt a wearable mindset in the coming decade, because wearables are here to grow. Now again, I wish to thank the organizers of MTE 2021 for the invitation and for me to share all this presentation. I hope that the tech wearable industry in Malaysia can prosper and progress, as this is a very vital part of the digital economy, and it can really generate and provide a lot of jobs. Now with this, I hope if you have any questions regarding any wearable tech or anything, you can email to me, or you can come and visit our booth at the Polar site. So I look forward to seeing all of you all. Thank you, and have a nice day ahead.